Hey there, this is Erica from Ever Educating, and this channel is teaching tips, tools, ideas, and resources for new college instructors. This is part of my series of videos where I cover one major assignment at a time, the big ideas and small ideas of it. And today we're covering an interesting project, and that is the majors presentation, or the majors connection presentation. And so I assigned this in a gen ed course, so general education course, and it ended up being one of the best projects according to my students. So I definitely wanted to share it as part of this series. As far as what courses to assign it in, this was a literature course, and I do think it lends itself to literature courses. But more generally, I think it lends itself to any general education course, any course that's where students are required to be there, even if it doesn't connect to their major. As far as when to assign it, it really depends. I ended up assigning it in connection to various novels, so students were doing these presentations across the whole term. But it might be something that you do early on if you want buy-in into your course, getting to see the connections to what they are studying. Or it might be something you do at the end of the term where, okay, we've covered all this. How do you see it connecting to your major? And maybe it's a final project instead. So it really depends on how you want to approach that. In my case, how this assignment worked is that, let's say we read 5 novels in this literature course. So students had to connect their major, right, to one of these novels. So I said, I want you to see how analyzing literature can be useful to you, even if you're not an English major, right? Even if you're not a humanities major. I want you to see the connections between what we're reading and your real life, like what you actually care about. So you're going to choose whatever novel you want. There wasn't a limitation, any novel you want. And you're going to create a 5-minute presentation where you talk about the connection between your major and an aspect of this novel. Now, a lot of students were like, what do you mean, right? So I definitely gave examples here. And then what they turned in was absolutely incredible. So for example, I taught Cinder, which is a YA novel featuring a cyborg. And so I had, a student who was an engineering major, right, who ended up presenting on prosthetics. And it was fascinating to hear what the student had to say about it. And they were fascinated when they submitted their reflection. I never even thought about the connection between, engineering and literature until we read this novel and I saw the cyborg character and I started thinking about things and I did research into, the military and prosthetics, and, it was just fascinating presentation. Right? Or, the student who was like, I'm an anthropology major. What do I do here? Well, we had a novel that featured dragons, and the student ended up doing basically a study, different types of evolution that are real, like real evolutionary theories, and applied it to the dragons using, close reading of the descriptions of them. So, a chemistry education major talking about the potions in Harry Potter, So it's one of those assignments where it's hard in the beginning. Students are unsure what they're going to be researching here. But as you help them brainstorm, as you give them ideas, then they create some really fascinating connections. And I do think it gave them a deeper appreciation for the class because they realized, when I read, I'm required to read for this course, I'm required to do these papers, I don't really enjoy any of it. But now, I'm thinking about what I read a little differently. I'm starting to see, how can I connect these stories to my real life in, ways that you wouldn't expect. So it's something that ended up going very well. And again, I was fascinated by all these presentations. As far as the weight goes, this can be pretty light because it might just be, again, a 5-minute presentation. You can do a little PowerPoint if you want. So maybe, it's worth 15% or 20% of their overall grade. But again, I do think, pros and cons wise, pros, it helps them see connections between general education and their major. In this specific case, it helps them to see how literature can really, connect to their life, even if they're not, avid or readers. I think pros, it obviously gives them public speaking skills because they're doing a presentation. And if they're going to be doing some kind of tech, maybe PowerPoint aspect, then they gain skills in that as well. It requires them to have focus, right? You only have 5 minutes. You want to make sure it flows well. You have to structure your presentation, keeping those limitations in mind. As far as cons goes, again, public speaking can be very anxiety-inducing for some students. And this is an individual presentation. So having ways of supporting them, maybe accommodating them, I offered that if they, couldn't stand the thought of presenting, the presentation in person, they can create a video recording, record themselves presenting, and we would share that with the class instead. And then all they would have to do would be the Q&A in person. So I do think, it can, again, create anxiety for public speaking for some students, but it's a, required part of life to be able to speak publicly about your topic in various careers. So I do think it's a helpful assignment in a lot of ways. And so again, really think about when you want to do it in the semester. If you want it early on, so there's more buy-in to your course. Later on, so they see, the connections, or maybe somewhere in between, like I did. If you found this video helpful, click like and let me know. I have quite a few already going on. I'll link those below. And I'll see you next time with a new video. Subscribe if you don't want to miss out on that.